every day we have a choice. Like, we have been given a mind and we have been given an imagination. And regardless of whatever way our upbringing was or all these other circumstances, the 3D world is malleable. It's able to change. So when we are directing our thoughts a certain way, and when we're changing our concept of ourselves, and I feel like just in my life, like it's been such a huge example because I had such a different concept of self, just being aware like that, oh, I can change my mind. Because sometimes we're not aware that we can, just knowing like, oh, all right, I had this moment and I felt really, really bad, 5 seconds ago. I'm going to allow myself to feel that. But I'm also going to know that whenever I want to, I don't have to rush, but whenever I want to, I can change my mind about how I view this, how I view myself and the other person or whoever else is involved. So I think that conscious awareness that I have the power to change and no one can take that away from me.
Well, hello, everybody. Welcome to Authentic Conversations. I am Amarelis, and today, if this is your first time joining us, I want to welcome you first. The energy is going around, and Amarelis is getting excited, so I'm going to calm myself down. So Susan and I have another special guest that is joining us. We are so blessed and excited to have Chrysanthe. Please say hello.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for having me.
Chrysanthe is very connected to the planets, to the alignment of the planets, to understanding who we are based on where the stars and planets were on the day that we were born. So there's this whole other exploration, right, that involves the universe and the stars. And, so like when we talk a lot about our own exploration and our inner exploration, but we are all connected to everything. So where the stars were in the moment you were born dictated some of the patterns and behaviors in your life that allow us to grow. So it's a lot to wrap your brain around. So we're just going to try to understand it a little better. So, and I think that Chrysanthe can explain it even better than me. So the first question I have for you, Miss Santhe, is what is it that led you towards the stars? Like, what do you remember about your childhood or growing up that brought this knowledge forward?
Yeah, thank you so much for that question. So I would say for myself, growing up, I always felt that I was different in terms of my sensitivities and just feeling like I felt the world very deeply. Certain like movies or TV shows would upset me. It would feel very stressful to be in those types of like chaotic environments, even if I knew that it was not real, even if I knew that it was acting or fake, it would still really be difficult for me because I really would resonate with the characters. And anytime that I saw anyone suffering, whether it be an animal or a person, I just felt so deeply. And that's not to say that there were not other compassionate people around me in my environment or other compassionate children, but I just felt that I was very, very sensitive. And I was looking for some type of way to understand this, because especially, being in school and everybody is learning the same way and we're all being assessed the same way, I really didn't feel that there was any like differentiation based on personality types. So I was trying to understand my personality better. And out of that desire to understand myself better, astrology came into my life. I didn't necessarily go seeking it or, searching on the internet for astrology. It just came to me in various forms, in books, in discussions with other people. So at a very young age, I think I was around like 10 years old, like I really started to think about astrology. And it started off, trying to understand my sun sign, which is the sign that most of us are familiar with. It's what we would call our zodiac sign. So in my case, being a Cancer, and I would read about Cancerian energy.
I'm a Cancer.
Oh, yay.
We have two Cancers and a Scorpio here. Everything you were saying, Chrysanthe, Amaryllis is going,
Oh,
right here, crying.
Yes.
I mean, if you want to just, have a show with me, my uncle would make fun of me and have me watch things with him.
Oh, no.
So that Yeah,
That
he
sounds
enjoyed the
horrible.
fact that I would cry, like sob,
Oh.
like La Bamba. I had like I was traumatized with the fact the plane and how he was feeling, and for days I was just sad. I couldn't get myself
Mm,
out of it. Like I get so involved in the situation, like it's even like you
mm.
said, and then I turn into an actress. But I mean,
Yeah, the actress masks the Cancer zodiac sign. But anyway, neither
but
here
yeah. So
nor there.
you're Cancer,
My
so you
kids pick
find
on
out.
me because my eyes well during commercials. They're
Mm.
like, really? And I'm like, they're like, look at mom, she's tearing up. I'm like, oh, yep. Oh, so anyway, back to sun, right? So sun sign is the first exposure, right? So the first exposure
Yeah.
is reading your horoscope.
Yeah. So what most people know as their zodiac sign, that's what I first started looking into. And then in the form of books, I started to realize, oh, we're more than just our sun sign. We actually have a whole natal chart. We have an entire birth chart. And as I started to read more and research more, I realized that all of these different placements that we have, they're all different expressions and they all influence different areas of life. And even though we're not controlled by astrology, we can definitely use these energies to help us in our lives, to gain better insight about ourselves, to foster more love for ourselves and for others as well. So that's what started, I would say that started the journey. And then a few years ago, I received formal education and training in astrology. But for most of my life prior, it was self-taught through reading and research.
Your time of birth. I know that that's one of the questions that I'm always afraid that my mother does not remember correctly. Is that really important to have in your chart, or if you forget, or if you don't have that information, how much does it change?
Yeah, so ideally, if you have your birth time and the location, latitude and longitude and date, your entire natal chart with all of the houses and degrees can be found and it can be decoded. A very skilled astrologer can actually take information about you and your life and with your birth date and kind of go backwards and be able to find your birth time if someone is very skilled in astrology. So that's one other option. And then let's say that someone doesn't have access to that and they have no idea what their birth time is. You can still gain a good chunk of information about your birth chart just by knowing the location and if you know the birth date. But that time is going to give you, like, the exact, we're talking asteroids and degrees and those exact placements.
Let's just say I'm listening to this and, I've read my horoscope, but I really don't know anything else about astrology. What would be like my next step? Like, what else would I want to know to not get overwhelmed? Because honestly, there is so much information that you can really get overwhelmed. So, if you start to dive down that hole, what kind of things would you look for next if you were a seeker of your information?
Yeah, so I think first would be the question is there something in particular that I'm looking for within my chart? Like, is there a particular area of life that I would like to know more about? Am I thinking about my emotions? Am I thinking about my relationships? Am I thinking about my work sphere, my education? So when you have those in mind, you'll be able to know which planets to focus on in particular. But in a general sense, what I like to do, and anytime that I'm doing a reading, I like to look at the inner planets. I always look at that first, and I feel that that weighs the most heavily. So the inner planets would be our sun, so our sun sign, our moon, which is in control, not in control, but it influences our emotions and our feelings and what we need in order to feel safe. I would also look at the Mercury, which is how we communicate with others and also how we are internalizing and receiving information. And then I would look at Venus, which has to do with relationships of all types, not just in terms of romance, but
Right.
friendships, our relationship with ourselves, with the earth, any type of connection. And then also looking at Mars, which is the planet of action. It's, how fast we are to move towards our goals. And it also influences anger and creative energy. So I would look at those first. And by looking at those first, we're going to have a very nice I would say a good defined view of self just by those planets alone. And then the final piece to that would be to look at your rising or ascendant sign, because that rising sign is the sign that's going to give you information about in your chart where you're aiming to be more like, because our sun and moon can come very naturally to us, but the rising sign, it's known as the literally the highest point in the chart. So it's what we're working towards. So it's what we want to activate more within ourselves. So for example, if I feel very, watery and very, full of emotions my whole life, but I want to activate more of that grounded earth energy. And let's say I have an earth sign in as my rising sign, that's going to be something for me to mentally and consciously be aware of, and to bring me comfort as I'm moving in more in that stable, reliable direction, if that makes sense.
So what tools would you use? So you find out that you're kind of like trying to ground yourself. I know crystals are something. Would that be something that you would use?
Oh, yes. So like when I do natal chart readings, one portion at the end of the reading that I like to do is to, I select certain energies in the chart, usually typically two, for the client to focus on after their reading. So for example, maybe if someone has, like, let's say a ton of water energy, and I really feel like perhaps some grounding would be useful, we'll look at different flowers that represent that earthy groundedness. There are certain plants and herbal essences, different aromas even can represent the different energies, as well as crystals. And I think one of the biggest parts is engaging in activities and affirmations that connect to whatever element you're trying to activate more of. So, for example, if someone is trying to activate more of that outgoing fire energy, perhaps, when they are writing their maybe affirmations in a notebook, lighting a candle, or just in engaging in some type of activity outdoors, maybe doing warm yoga to invoke that natural
Fire.
heat.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah. So all sorts of ways to do that.
I love the plant. Sorry, Susan, go ahead.
No. The plants are great. The lighting the candle to represent fire is also a great idea. But Chrysanthe, even something as simple as color.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
So what color shirt are you choosing to wear today can represent something. What color you paint your walls, what color what color car you choose to drive. Like, color is very powerful in energy.
Yes, that's such a wonderful point. And what we'll even start to notice is that people will select certain colors maybe without even being consciously aware. So sometimes what I've noticed, especially when I know people's charts, they might gravitate towards colors that represent the elements that are dominant in their chart. But sometimes people instinctively know to go for colors that they're yearning for, that they're craving more of. So, for example, I know someone who has so much Virgo grounded energy in her chart, and she's actually, she's not going for like the greens and those type of earthy colors. She's going more for the deep purple spiritual colors, because the way I internalize it is she has so much of that groundedness. Her work is so focused on being analytical and logical, and she's naturally reaching for a color that represents more of that spiritual crown chakra area. So colors are fascinating.
So can we talk a little bit about the day we met? Because
oh yes, please.
until that moment, until this conversation right now, I didn't realize the significance of the binder.
Yes. Okay. Yes, definitely. So, I was in my first year of teaching, and I work as an ENL teacher, and Sue came into my little tiny classroom. I mean, really, really tiny. And I was just so frantic. Just imagine like little cancer crab just being so overwhelmed and just feeling lost in like a sea of loneliness and franticness, and at that time really not feeling enough in what I was providing, and I really just didn't feel worthy, to be completely honest, during that time. And Sue came in and was like this pillar of goodness walking into the room. Just her strength, like her confidence, like was just exuding. And for how I was feeling at that time, like that's what I wanted to be more like. That's what I was yearning for. And she came in and she gave me a hug for one thing, which was something I really, really needed at the time. And she also had a red binder. And so the significance of that color being red, when we're thinking about fire energy exudes confidence, right? I mean, fire is very confident. Fire doesn't care who's looking there. Fire does not hide itself. Fire shines. We're thinking of a flame. We're thinking of brightness. And so she's just exuding her own fire energy while also being very grounded and sure of herself. And she gives me this red binder and she's encouraging me to help myself to get organized with that red binder. So putting, certain documents that I would need in school, to have it in this central location where I would always be able to refer to it. And I remember at the time her saying that, that red color is going to, kind of like attract and draw your eye to it.
Mm-hmm.
But I think there's definitely a deeper symbolic meaning as well, not just that it's easy to spot if my desk is a mess, but that fire is it's inviting, it's warm, it's confident, it's brave, it's courageous. And those are all qualities that, I think we all can use, but I especially needed at that time. So she could have chosen any color binder to give me, but it was specifically that red. And I don't think anything is a coincidence. So I thank you so
Absolutely.
much for that. And I still have that binder.
You still have the red binder. I'm happy to hear that. But yes, and again, you were just talking about whether it's instinctual or whether it's deliberate. And, the binder was deliberate. The color of the binder represented so much more of, what you needed at that time and the connection that we needed to make. I often talk about like plugging in when you need something. You need to plug in, but we want to plug into the place that is going to feed us or fuel us. So yeah, no, that just occurred to me when I was like, oh, dang, I brought that young, deer-eyed, wide-eyed, brand new overwhelmed teacher red binder for a reason. Yes. Talk about feeling people like, so it's interesting because Chrysanthe has a beautiful gift, and like, she can walk past someone and go, Sagittarius, or Sagittarius is heavy in their charts, and you're like, wow, that comes over time, or maybe that's just your gift. I don't know, but
thank you so much. So I think that it really boils down to the elements. So thinking about earth element, air, fire, and water. And when we think about these, all of the zodiac signs correspond to one of these elements. Some people would even debate some of them are a mix, but at their core, they all correspond with one of these elements. So when I'm around someone, or just being aware and just noticing their mannerisms, the words that they're speaking, their reactions to things, you can kind of begin to identify and say, okay, this person seems very watery, or this person, or, we are definitely always a blend. Like this person seems fiery, but definitely has that bit of logic that kicks in, that airiness, the ability to rationalize. And so when I do that, it helps to narrow it down when I'm thinking in terms of elements, because we're all we're composed of star stuffs, we're composed of celestial energy, and these elements are corresponding with the celestial energies. So I think the first step is when you're able to not just look at someone, but as you get to know someone and the parts that they're sharing, of course, with you, and you can begin to see, okay, they're leaning more in the direction of these elements. And then from there, you can narrow it down and think about all of the zodiac energies and see which ones fit in with that fire. If this person is very fiery, am I seeing more of that regal, confident Leo energy? Am I seeing more of that fun-loving, perhaps a bit rebellious Sagittarian energy? Am I seeing more of that, full force ahead, leadership Aries energy? And then you begin to narrow it down from there.
Chrysanthe, do you feel like, how did you mentioned a lot about the energy, and we're asking you, like, you're also feeling other people's energy. At what age, because it seems like you almost like instantly knew to kind of guide your energy to find, you connected the dots of like, oh, I'm getting a lot of books. And did you already at a young age, like religiously, like what was your background? Like how did you spiritually guide yourself in the right direction towards the light? Because I feel like, sometimes people can get it all confused and not understand the energy of empath, and things that happen in their life can become more towards the upset darkness. What are you?
Yes. Yeah, that's so beautiful, and such a wonderful question. So for me, I essentially I grew up in the Greek Orthodox Church. So I grew up with religion for quite a few years. As a child, I attended church quite regularly, if not weekly, then a few times a month. And I believe that structure was very helpful at the time, because especially, and that's another thing with astrology, you have your birth chart and it's known as your blueprint, but we're constantly evolving, and we're constantly, like, every day we're born again. Every day we have a chance to think new, to be different. So we're going to interact and enhance certain energies in our charts depending on the season of life, or even just day to day or hour to hour. And another thing we can do is we can begin to identify. So not necessarily straying away from the question, but just want to also add this in. We have something known as more evolved expressions of a certain zodiac sign, and then perhaps unevolved or lesser evolved. So I'll just give an example really quick with Cancerian energy and how that ties into your question. As a child, I feel that Cancerian energy was very much activated, and sometimes more of those unevolved aspects of Cancer energy, which can be quite moody, can often like victimize herself, can, kind of tend to see things more in like the negative light, or create that in my mind. And so I was expressing a lot of those energies. And then that's why I think, especially having the structure of church and just attending someplace weekly was helpful, because it gave some groundedness to all of my water. It acted, it served as like that grounded institution, just like school did, that can really be like some type of pillar when you feel like you're just in the ocean. But then from there, once I entered into college and I just started to think a lot about who are we, and that I started to really think, and I'm like, we are naturally good. And we are naturally, not to say that church didn't teach that, but just my own thoughts, I started thinking, we're naturally good and we're naturally pure, regardless of what our birth chart is, regardless of what our upbringing, regardless of the things that we've even done or said. Everybody, my belief is everybody at their core is an expression from the Most High, from divinity. We're all good, we're all pure. And the thing is that from there, we've accumulated a lot of data as time goes on, which led me to learning more about a spiritual practice, a spiritual prayer. Perhaps some people have heard of it before. It's called Ho'oponopono, and it's a Hawaiian prayer for cleaning. And Ho'oponopono translates to make right. And what this prayer does is it recognizes that everyone is a beautiful crystal. Every person on this earth is beautiful, but on each like facet of the crystal, there's certain layers of muck that have accumulated based on our programming, right? And that muck can make it difficult for us to shine our light. So when we begin to clean through in one form is through these healing words, which are, I'm sorry, please forgive me, thank you, I love you. When we clean, we start to dissolve the past memories and past judgments and beliefs about ourselves, about others, about society, and our light can shine. So I would say for me, and a very long way to answer your question, is that I started off in a more structured religious setting. But as I started to learn more about astrology and just think about who I am as a spirit soul, as a soul within a body, Ho'oponopono came into my life. And that is very much a daily practice. And that also really helps me with astrology, because I used to often chain myself to my perceptions of my birth chart. And
Mm.
I used to think, oh, well, I can't do this because I don't, I'm not as fiery as so and so, and or I'm always going to feel this sensitive because look how much water I have. But those are very much limiting beliefs, because astrology is never meant to chain us.
Mm.
Astrology is meant to enhance us and to free us even more,
Yeah.
because we all have everyone's chart. We don't just have, even if you have 7 placements in an earth sign, you still have other elements mixed in there. And it's our conscious choice to choose. So I would say that through the use of this cleansing prayer and me just thinking about my chart in a different way, it's really helped to open a whole new world for me of how I treat myself and how I view others as well.
Oh, wow.
Yes,
I
yes.
felt that.
At
So
the
that
wise
was
old at the wise old age of 20 something. This is so fabulous. I love this. Chrysanthe, you said something that really struck. It's the blueprint, right? The astrological chart is the blueprint. And when we have blueprints, right, we build to specifications, but we make adjustments and modifications as we're building, and we put additions and we decorate and so yes, it's kind of a awareness foundation to build upon and to strengthen areas that are not in your strong suit, and to tame energies that can take over what it is, that you've always done. So I think going back to authentic conversations, if we keep doing what we've always done, we're going to get what we always get.
Yes. Yes.
So, it's really however your awareness is peaked, whether it's through mindfulness or through astrology or, through meditation or through, chanting or prayer or affirmations, whatever resonates with you, it's just another knowing, another layer of knowledge.
It just goes along with the concept of every day we have a choice. Like, we have been given a mind and we have been given an imagination, and regardless of whatever way our upbringing was or all these other circumstances, the 3D world is malleable. It's able to change. So when we are directing our thoughts a certain way, and when we're changing our concept of ourselves, and I feel like just in my life, like, it's been such a huge example because I had such a different concept of self, and I'm sure Sue saw like the last bits of that when she met me some years ago, but I'm still definitely like, I have my
We're all
moments,
growing.
but
we all have those moments.
We're all growing.
yes, but I just feel like, just being aware like that, oh, I can change my mind, because sometimes we're not aware that we can. Just knowing like, oh, all right, I had this moment and I felt really, really bad, 5 seconds ago. I'm going to allow myself to feel that, but I'm also going to know that whenever I want to, I don't have to rush, but whenever I want to, I can change my mind about how I view this, how I view myself and the other person or whoever else is involved. So I think that conscious awareness that I have the power to change and no one can take that away from me.
And the time, because humanly, we want it to be done like this.
Yes.
When it's not like that, when it's not the next day and you wake up with the same feeling, you just start to get down on yourself and you're like, oh, but I still feel this way. Why is this? I'm doing all this work. Why isn't it happening? And for me, as my example, it took me 19 years to start again a relationship with my father, where I still can tap into the moments where he just left me a voicemail the other day, and it took me a week for me to listen to it. And I had to lovingly talk to myself and go, it's okay. If you're not ready to listen to this voicemail, if you're not ready to connect again, it's okay. When you are, you will be, right? And I can even hear in his voice the disconnect of like, hey, I'm just kind of checking up on you, and it's like all this human thing that's in there, right? That we can dissect to death, or we can allow ourselves to say, I'm going to take that in. I know this is great. He's checking up on me, because I'm already developing all these other stories about something else that came through to me that I'm upset about. And I had to just allow myself to just say, just if you're ready to respond, I'm not listen to it and let it go. It's like you said, but this is like, you know, I look at it, I'm going, wow, 19 years, we're back at this again. How am I going to approach it differently? And I think that this is a whole other subject that we would love to have you back. Just on that, on just the fact that we can change our mind by using astrology, using these tools, energy, groundingness, which we talk about so much in Authentic Conversation, and allowing ourselves to change our mindset. Oh, I would be honored if you can come back so that we could tap into that. That's just a whole section there.
I would love to. Thank you so much. Yes, this is, I mean, honestly, it's everything, because changing our mind is it's gonna change the way we view everything in our world. It's gonna help ease ourselves, and it's so beautiful that you're able to engage in that self-talk, in that self-soothing. Like, that's everything.
So
Amazing.
Chrysanthe, if I wanted to have a reading or to learn more about what you do, how can I do that?
Yeah, so I have a website that people can visit, and I also have an Instagram account that the website is connected to in the bio. So the Instagram is Chrysanthe Soul, and I can also share the website astrology.services.com, and from there someone can book a reading. There's also an email address, Chrysanthe Soul, so SANTHESSOL@gmail.com. And that might even just be the easiest way. Someone can send me an email just expressing that they'd like to learn more, or if they have any questions, or if they'd like to book a reading, and then I can connect with them from there. And typically readings are done via Zoom, recorded, and this client is given 2 layouts of their chart. We go through the dominant energies, and at the end of every reading there is a portion that is included, as we were speaking earlier, about those plants or flowers in particular that can correspond with certain energies, as well as a list of activities that the client can engage in to enhance certain energies.
I'm next.
Listen, it's written in the stars, right, Chrysanthe? You are gifted and talented, and I feel blessed to have crossed your path on that very day in that very place.
I feel so blessed. Thank you so much.
Well, everyone, thank you so much for joining us again. And thank you, Chrysanthe. Thank you, Susan, for being here this morning. And I appreciate you all. And we will see each other soon.